My name is Julius, and at 67 years old, I thought I knew my son Anthony better than anyone. After losing my wife Margaret 3 years ago, he suddenly became the perfect son again, visiting more often and showing concern. When he surprised me with a luxury train journey across the country, I was touched. Until that fateful morning when I accidentally walked in through the side door and overheard him telling his wife Laura about my one-way ticket to nowhere. I whispered to myself, "All right, darling, we'll do it your way, but you will regret this." If you're joining me on this journey of betrayal and redemption, please drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and prepare yourself for a story of family deception that will break your heart. I spent over 40 years as an architect in Boston. Not just any architect, but one whose designs still punctuate the skyline of this historic city. The Johnson Financial Building downtown, that was mine. The curved glass facade of the Waterfront Museum that tourists flock to photograph, also mine. I built a career designing spaces for others to live and work in, while carefully constructing my own life with equal attention to detail. Margaret and I purchased our colonial home in Brookline 35 years ago. 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, with a sunroom that Margaret transformed into her art studio. The maple trees I planted when we moved in now tower over the yard, their leaves turning brilliant shades of orange and red every fall. We raised our son Anthony in this house, filled it with laughter, arguments, holiday gatherings, and all the complex emotions that make up a family. Anthony wasn't my only child, not biologically. I had a daughter with my first wife, Cynthia, who left us when Anthony was just 3 years old. She disappeared to California with some musician, leaving me a single father overnight. My daughter eventually followed her mother's footsteps, and I haven't heard from either in decades. Anthony became my focus, my purpose. I worked extra projects to afford the best for him. Private school at Bradford Academy, where tuition cost more than my first year's salary as an architect. Tennis lessons, summer camps, a car on his 16th birthday. Later, I paid every cent of his college education at Princeton, then helped with the down payment on his first house. I never saw any of it as a burden. He was my son. That's what fathers do. Anthony married Laura 15 years ago. She came from a wealthy Connecticut family but had expensive tastes that even her trust fund couldn't satisfy. As a real estate agent, she specialized in luxury properties, moving among the elite of Boston society. She always looked immaculate, not a strand of her highlighted hair out of place, not a wrinkle in her designer clothes. From our first meeting, there was something in her eyes when she looked at our home, a calculating gaze that seemed to be appraising its value rather than appreciating it as our family home. Their wedding cost a small fortune, most of it from my pocket despite her parents' supposed wealth. Margaret whispered to me during the reception, "I hope he knows what he's getting into." But we smiled and danced and welcomed Laura into our family, because that's what parents do. For years, we maintained a cordial relationship. Sunday dinners twice a month, holiday gatherings, the occasional weekend at our vacation cottage on Cape Cod. Laura and Margaret never became close, but they coexisted peacefully. Anthony and I remained connected, though as he climbed the corporate ladder at a financial services firm, our conversations increasingly revolved around investments, property values, and market trends rather than the philosophical discussions we'd enjoyed during his college years. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, Sophia and James, beautiful kids who I barely know now. When they were young, we were closer. I taught James how to fish off the pier at the Cape. I helped Sophia build her science project when she was in 4th grade, a working model of a hydraulic lift that won first prize. But as they entered their teen years, their visits became rarer, their attention more focused on their phones than on their grandfather. After Margaret was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer, everything changed. For 3 years, my world narrowed to hospital visits, medication schedules, and doing everything possible to keep her comfortable. Anthony visited sporadically, always with an excuse about work pressure or the kids' activities. Laura stopped coming altogether, sending impersonal flower arrangements instead of offering actual help. When Margaret died, Anthony stood beside me at the funeral, his hand occasionally patting my shoulder, in what felt like an imitation of comfort he'd seen in movies rather than genuine emotion. Laura spent most of the service checking her phone. Neither of my grandchildren cried. I wondered if they even understood what was happening, or if death was just another inconvenience in their privileged lives. The first year after Margaret's passing was a fog. I went through the motions of living without actually feeling alive. The house echoed with silence. I ate when I remembered to, slept when exhaustion overtook me, and avoided the sunroom where Margaret's unfinished painting still stood on the easel. Gradually, with the persistent support of friends and neighbors, I rejoined the world of the living. I began volunteering at the community center, teaching architecture classes to disadvantaged youth. I joined a grief support group where I met Elaine, a widow whose gentle humor and practical wisdom helped heal parts of me I thought were permanently broken. My weekly poker games, with Harold, Walter, and the guys became highlights rather than obligations. I had nearly $2 million in retirement savings and investments. The house was fully paid off, and Margaret's life insurance had added another substantial sum to my accounts. Money was the least of my worries, or so I thought. The first sign of Anthony's changing attitude was so subtle I almost missed it. A canceled dinner with a vague excuse. A question about my investment portfolio that seemed oddly specific. Comments about how big the house was for just one person. Suggestions that I might be happier in a community of seniors with similar interests. Laura began calling more frequently, her voice dripping with concern about my well-being. Are you eating properly, Julius? Are you remembering to take your medications? Have you thought about getting one of those medical alert necklaces? I was 67, not 90, and in excellent health apart from some arthritis in my knees. Their concern might have seemed touching if I hadn't noticed other changes. Anthony asking about my will and whether it was updated. Laura wondering if I'd considered simplifying by selling some of Margaret's jewelry or art collection. The way they exchanged glances when I mentioned a trip I was planning with Elaine. Something had shifted, but I couldn't quite identify what it was. Not yet. The Sunday when everything changed started normally enough. I was planning to spend the afternoon with Elaine at a jazz concert in the park when Anthony called to say he and Laura wanted to stop by with something important. His voice had that forced cheerfulness that immediately put me on guard. They arrived at 2 o'clock, Laura carrying a glossy gift bag, and Anthony holding an expensive bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, my favorite wine. Their smiles seemed rehearsed, too wide, not quite reaching their eyes. "Dad, you look great," Anthony said, embracing me with uncharacteristic warmth. "Have you lost weight? You seem younger somehow." Laura air kissed near both my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming as she brushed past me into the living room. "The house looks lovely, Julius. Though these curtains must be from what, the 90s? We should update them, bring some fresh energy in here." I opened the wine while they settled on the couch, noticing how Laura's eyes darted around the room, as if mentally cataloging its contents. Anthony kept checking his watch, his knee bouncing with barely contained energy or anxiety. I couldn't tell which. "So what brings you both by today?" I asked, handing them each a glass. "You mentioned having something important to discuss." They exchanged a quick glance before Anthony reached for the gift bag. "Dad, Laura and I have been talking. Since Mom died, you've been alone in this big house, working so hard with your volunteer work, barely taking time for yourself." Laura nodded vigorously. "You've always taken care of everyone else, Julius. First Anthony after his mother left, then Margaret during her illness. Now it's time someone took care of you." From the bag, Anthony produced several glossy brochures and a leather travel wallet. "We've arranged something special for you. The Transcontinental Explorer, the premier luxury train journey across America. 14 days of scenic routes, gourmet dining, exclusive excursions, and absolutely no responsibilities." I examined the brochures, genuinely surprised. The train looked beautiful, with its gleaming silver exterior and opulent interiors that harkened back to the golden age of rail travel. Private sleeping compartments, observation cars with panoramic windows, and white glove service. "This is unexpected," I said carefully, noting the departure date was just 3 weeks away. "It looks wonderful, but I have commitments, classes I'm teaching at the community center, and Elaine and I were planning." We've already spoken to the community center, Laura interrupted smoothly. They completely understand you needing a break. As for Elaine, she paused, her smile tightening slightly. This journey is about you reconnecting with yourself, Julius, finding your path forward alone. Anthony leaned forward, his expression earnest. Dad, after Mom died, you threw yourself into staying busy. But have you really processed your grief? This trip gives you the space to do that, away from all the memories and responsibilities. Something about their generosity felt off, but I couldn't immediately identify why. The trip would cost thousands of dollars, far more than Anthony and Laura typically spent on gifts, especially for me. What about my house, my plants, my mail? I asked. That's the best part, Laura said quickly. We'll stay here and watch over everything. Water the plants, forward important mail. Make sure everything's perfect for your return, Anthony added. We've actually been wanting to do some updates to our place, and the contractors are scheduled during the same time. This works out perfectly for everyone. As they continued explaining the details, the questions became increasingly strange. What possessions would you absolutely need to bring with you? Laura asked. Notepad ready. Any jewelry, important documents, family heirlooms you couldn't bear to be parted from. Maybe pack light on clothes, Anthony suggested. But definitely bring Mom's wedding ring, your important papers, anything irreplaceable. When Anthony went to the bathroom, Laura slid a stack of documents toward me. Just some paperwork for the trip. Insurance forms, medical proxies, that sort of thing. If you could sign these today, it would save time later. I glanced at the papers, noticing phrases like power of attorney and temporary guardianship buried among mundane travel insurance forms. I placed them aside, saying I'd review them later with my reading glasses. Laura's smile faltered slightly. They're really just standard forms, Julius. Nothing to worry about. When Anthony returned, he casually dropped a key on the coffee table. I recognized it immediately as a new copy of my house key, though I hadn't authorized one to be made. Already had this copy made for emergencies, he explained when he saw me looking. Better safe than sorry, right? As they prepared to leave, Laura asked to use the bathroom. 10 minutes later, I found her in my home office, photographing the contents of my filing cabinet. Just getting ideas for organizing our paperwork at home, she explained with a brittle laugh. You've always been so methodical. After they left, I called my neighbor Walter, who had been my friend for over 20 years. Something weird just happened, I told him, explaining about the surprise trip. Free luxury train trip? That doesn't sound like the Anthony I know, Walter said. Last Christmas he gave you a tie he clearly got from a clearance rack. And now he's spending thousands on a train journey? Something doesn't add up, Julius. That evening, Elaine expressed similar concerns. Why now? And why are they so eager to stay in your house? Anthony and Laura have a beautiful home of their own. Maybe I'm being paranoid, I said. Maybe they really are just trying to do something nice for me. Elaine took my hand. Your intuition is telling you something. Don't ignore it. The next day, I found Anthony had left his jacket behind. While hanging it in the closet, I felt something in the pocket, a small key I didn't recognize, labeled Storage Unit B21. I replaced it exactly as I'd found it, my unease growing. When Laura called that afternoon to ask if I'd signed the paperwork yet, I told her I needed more time. Her tone instantly changed from warm to irritated. It's just routine, Julius. The train company requires it. You're not making this easy. I never said I was easy, I replied mildly. Just thorough. Over the next few days, Anthony and Laura stopped by frequently, always with logical reasons, dropping off more brochures, bringing a new suitcase better suited for train travel, offering to help organize my belongings before the trip. Each time, I noticed something. Laura measuring rooms with a small tape measure when she thought I wasn't looking. Anthony examining my artwork and antiques with newfound interest, both of them encouraging me to pack anything valuable for safekeeping during my absence. I began to wonder if the train journey was merely a distraction from something else entirely, something that made my stomach knot with dread when I allowed myself to consider the possibilities. My first concrete realization that something was seriously wrong came when I couldn't find my mother's antique silver serving set. It had been in the family for generations, carefully stored in the dining room hutch. When I mentioned this to Anthony during his next visit, his response was too casual. "You probably moved it and forgot, Dad. Happens to everyone as they get older." This dismissive comment about my memory was new. I had never been forgetful, and Anthony knew it. I'd designed complex architectural projects well into my 60s, managing thousands of details simultaneously. The suggestion that I'd misplace a cherished family heirloom wasn't just wrong. It was calculated. More items began to disappear after each of their visits. A small Waterford crystal vase, the rare first edition Hemingway that Margaret had given me on our 30th anniversary, my grandfather's gold pocket watch. Each time, the response was the same, a sympathetic smile, a comment about memory lapses being normal at your age. Then I discovered the missing financial documents. My most recent bank statements, insurance policies, property deed, and the folder containing information about my investment portfolio all vanished from my filing cabinet. When confronted, Anthony suggested I might have reorganized and forgotten where I put them. "Actually, I'm concerned about you, Dad," he said, his face arranged in an expression of worry. "These memory issues seem to be happening more frequently. Laura and I were talking, and maybe we should look into some cognitive testing for you." The next day, I received a call from my bank. "Mr. Harrington, this is Frank Williams from First National. Someone attempted to access your accounts yesterday using your personal information. They weren't successful because they couldn't answer your security questions. But I wanted to alert you." I drove straight to the bank, where Frank, who had handled my accounts for over a decade, showed me the access attempts. "They had your social security number, date of birth, even your mother's maiden name," Frank explained. "But they failed the additional verification questions we've established. Do you have any idea who might have tried this?" "Unfortunately, I think I do," I replied quietly. Frank's expression grew serious. "Julius, I've known you for years. You're one of the sharpest clients I have. If someone's trying to take advantage of you, we need to take immediate action." Together, we changed all my account passwords, added extra security protocols, and transferred a significant portion of my assets to a new account that only I could access. Frank also suggested I consult with my attorney as soon as possible. "Elder financial abuse is more common than people realize," he said, "especially when family members are involved." That same afternoon, I received a strange call from my friend Richard, asking why Anthony had been inquiring about my cognitive state. He called asking if I'd noticed any confusion or memory problems when we play poker. Richard said he was worried about you living alone. I told him, "You routinely clean us all out at Texas Hold'em, and your memory's better than all of ours combined. What's going on, Julius?" Similar calls came from other friends. Anthony had been systematically contacting people in my social circle, planting seeds of doubt about my mental capacity. The pattern was unmistakable and deeply disturbing. When I returned home that day, I found Laura showing a couple through my house. They were examining the built-in bookshelves in my study when I walked in. "Julius," Laura exclaimed, clearly startled. "I thought you were at your volunteering thing today." "It was canceled," I said calmly. "Who are these people, and why are they in my home?" Laura recovered quickly. "Oh, these are friends of ours who are remodeling. I was just showing them your beautiful woodwork for inspiration. Tom and Diane. This is Anthony's father, Julius." The couple looked uncomfortable, nodding politely before making a hasty exit. As they left, I overheard the woman whisper, "I thought you said the owner was already moving out." Later that week, while Anthony and Laura were supposedly taking me to lunch, I deliberately left my wallet behind as an excuse to return to their car. There, partially visible under some papers on the back seat, was a real estate contract. I couldn't see all the details, but I clearly saw my address at the top of the form. My suspicions now fully aroused, I began researching the final destination listed on my train journey itinerary, Silver Sunset Acres in Arizona. The brochures described it as the final stop on your journey, where the real adventure begins. The website revealed it was an assisted living facility specializing in memory care and residents requiring guardianship. There was no return ticket included in my travel package. It was, quite literally, a one-way journey. I called the train company directly, pretending to confirm details about my upcoming trip. I'm looking forward to my journey, but I seem to have misplaced the information about my return travel arrangements, I said. Let me check that for you, Mr. Harrington, the representative replied. After a brief pause, I'm showing this as a one-way booking to Sedona, Arizona. There are no return arrangements in our system. The pieces were fitting together into a disturbing picture. Anthony and Laura weren't planning a vacation for me. They were planning to ship me across the country to a care facility while they took over my home and assets. The temporary stay at my house would become permanent. The encouragement to bring valuables and important documents was to clear out any remaining items of worth before they sold everything else. My poker buddy Harold, a retired detective, offered to help investigate further. This is elder abuse, plain and simple, he said gravely. Financial exploitation, attempts at isolation, creating a false narrative about your mental capacity, all classic tactics. With Harold's help, I discovered Anthony had taken out loans, using my house as collateral, forging my signature on the documents. He and Laura were underwater on their mortgage, facing possible foreclosure on their own home due to their extravagant spending habits. They're desperate for money, Harold concluded. And you, my friend, are sitting on a gold mine they think they're entitled to. I implemented a careful strategy. Outwardly, I became increasingly excited about the train journey, thanking Anthony and Laura profusely for their generosity. I asked detailed questions about Silver Sunset Acres, commenting on how peaceful it sounded. Meanwhile, I documented everything. I installed small cameras in common areas of my house with Harold's help. I recorded phone conversations. I collected statements from friends Anthony had contacted. I gathered bank records showing the attempted account access. I also secured my most truly valuable possessions. Not the ones Anthony and Laura were after, but items of genuine sentimental value. Margaret's journals, our wedding album, the drawings Anthony had made for me as a child. These I stored with Elaine for safekeeping. As the departure date approached, Anthony and Laura's behavior grew bolder. Anthony brought over boxes, suggesting I might want to downsize before the trip. You won't need all these books and things at Silver Sunset, he said casually. They have a fully furnished apartment waiting for you. Apartment? I asked innocently. The brochure mentioned private rooms on the train. Anthony flushed slightly. Right, on the train. But the resort at the end has nice apartments. Laura began referring to my house as theirs in subtle ways. We're thinking of repainting this room once you're enjoying your trip. The realtor thinks we could list it immediately. I overheard her whisper to Anthony when they thought I was out of earshot. Each slip, each revealing comment, each piece of evidence strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about protecting my assets. This was about standing up to a betrayal so profound it had shaken my understanding of who my son had become. 3 days before my scheduled departure, I had a routine doctor's appointment that was unexpectedly canceled when my physician was called to an emergency. The receptionist called to let me know just as I was about to leave the house. Without really thinking about it, I decided to return home rather than waste the morning. I pulled into my driveway around 10:30, noticing both Anthony and Laura's cars parked out front. They weren't expecting me back so soon, and I hadn't called to tell them about the canceled appointment. I entered through the side door that led directly into the kitchen, a habit from years of bringing groceries in that way. I had just stepped inside when I heard their voices coming from the dining room. Something in their tone made me pause. They clearly didn't hear me enter. The real estate agent says we can list it for $1.2 million easily, Laura was saying, her voice animated with excitement I hadn't heard from her in years. Even after we pay off his mortgage and the equity line you took out, we're looking at close to $700,000. That plus whatever's left in his accounts after the lawyer takes his cut for the guardianship paperwork. The old man's been squirreling away cash for decades, Anthony replied. The investment portfolio alone is worth over $1 million. Once we get the power of attorney finalized, we can liquidate everything. I stood frozen by the kitchen door, my hand still on the knob, unable to move or make my presence known. Their words washed over me like ice water. I already have buyers lined up, Laura continued. That couple from New York loves the location, and they don't even care about the outdated kitchen. They'd close fast. Cash offer. Perfect timing, too. Once we drop him off at the station Friday, we'll have the weekend to clear out anything we want to keep before the estate sale people come through. How long do you think before he figures out he's not coming back? Laura asked with a laugh that sent chills through me. The old man won't ever know what hit him, Anthony replied. The care facility has strict phone privileges, and they're instructed to monitor his mail. Part of the memory care protocol we're paying extra for. By the time he realizes what's happening, the house will be sold, accounts emptied, and we'll have legal control through guardianship. God, it's about time, Laura sighed. I've been waiting years for the old man's money. Your mother held on forever with that cancer. I thought she'd never go. The casual cruelty in her voice made my stomach clench. But it was Anthony's response that truly broke something inside me. At least the one-way ticket to the retirement warehouse solves our problems. No more pretending to care about his boring stories or checking in on him. Once he's in Arizona, it's their problem if he gets confused or upset. The beautiful part is, the more he protests, the more it confirms our story about his mental decline. They laughed together, the sound of it echoing in my head like a physical blow. My own son, my Anthony, the boy I had raised alone after his mother abandoned us. The child I had sacrificed for, worked extra hours for, paid for every advantage in life. He was coldly planning to discard me like garbage while stealing everything I had worked my entire life to build. My chest tightened painfully. I couldn't seem to get enough air. Sweat broke out on my forehead as I leaned against the wall, fighting to remain silent despite the roaring in my ears. I had suspected, yes. The evidence had been mounting, but hearing it stated so baldly, with such calculated indifference to my well-being, was devastating in a way I hadn't been prepared for. Memories flashed through my mind in rapid succession. Anthony at 7, crying with joy when I surprised him with his first bicycle. At 12, proudly showing me his science fair medal. At 18, in his graduation cap and gown, hugging me and whispering, "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad." When had that boy transformed into this stranger discussing my disposal so callously? I must have made some small sound, because suddenly the conversation in the dining room stopped. "Did you hear something?" Laura asked. I silently backed out the way I had come, easing the door closed without a sound. Somehow, I made it to my car without being seen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely insert the key into the ignition. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, unable to think clearly through the fog of betrayal and heartache. Eventually, I found myself outside Harold's house. He took one look at my face when he opened the door and pulled me inside. "Jesus, Julius, you look like you've seen a ghost. What happened?" The story spilled out of me in disjointed fragments. Harold poured me a stiff whiskey and listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. I knew they were up to something. But this, he shook his head in disgust. This is criminal. Not just elder abuse now, but fraud, conspiracy, attempted exploitation. We need to record everything. And you need a safe place to stay until we get this sorted. "I can't believe this is happening," I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow to my own ears. "My own son, Harold. My own flesh and blood." "Blood doesn't always make family," Harold said gently. "Real family doesn't treat each other this way." The physical symptoms of my emotional devastation were overwhelming. My chest ached as though someone had reached in and squeezed my heart. I couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. The betrayal kept replaying in my mind, each time I closed my eyes. For a brief dark moment, I considered simply giving up. Let them take everything. What did material possessions matter when I'd already lost something infinitely more valuable, the love and respect of my only son? But then I thought of Margaret, my sweet, strong Margaret who had faced cancer with unflinching courage. She would never want me to surrender to this betrayal. And I thought of all the other elderly people who might not have friends like Harold or the resources to fight back. If Anthony and Laura succeeded with me, who else might they target in the future? Something hardened inside me, a resolve born from the ashes of my heartbreak. I would not be a victim. I would not disappear quietly to that facility in Arizona while they dismantled my life. I would fight back, not just for myself, but for Margaret's memory and for anyone else who had ever been betrayed by those they trusted most. "What do we do now?" I asked Harold, sitting up straighter. Now, Harold's expression was grimly determined. Now we gather the troops and prepare for battle. These kids have no idea who they're messing with. By the time I left Harold's house that evening, we had the beginnings of a plan. I returned home well after dinner time, giving a believable excuse about meeting friends for an early dinner. Anthony and Laura had left a note, saying they'd return tomorrow to help me finalize packing. I moved through the house feeling like a stranger, seeing each room through new eyes, imagining them planning its sale, even as they smiled to my face. The next morning, I called Jackson Clark, my attorney for over 25 years. He cleared his schedule to see me immediately when I said it was an emergency. Elder abuse is on the rise, but I never thought I'd see it in your family, Jackson said after I explained the situation. His normally calm demeanor was replaced with controlled anger. Anthony's actions cross multiple legal boundaries. The forged signatures alone are felony fraud. What Jackson revealed next stunned me. Julius, Anthony has already filed initial paperwork for guardianship proceedings. He's claiming you're showing signs of dementia and are unable to manage your affairs. He has a psychiatric evaluation scheduled for you upon arrival in Arizona. But that's absurd, I protested. I'm completely competent. Anyone who knows me can attest to that. Exactly, Jackson nodded. Which is why you're going to undergo a comprehensive cognitive assessment today with one of the most respected geriatric specialists in Massachusetts. I've already made the arrangements. By that afternoon, I had a complete neuropsychological evaluation documenting my excellent cognitive function with no signs of dementia or impairment. The report specifically noted my superior financial management skills and excellent decision-making capacity. This is your shield, Jackson said, placing the report in a secure file. Now we build your sword. Next, we visited Frank at the bank to implement additional security measures. All my accounts were frozen to external access, requiring in-person verification for any transaction. New accounts were created at different institutions, with significant portions of my assets transferred to them. If anyone attempts to access your accounts again, we'll have immediate notification and evidence, Frank assured me. Harold activated his network of former law enforcement colleagues, including Thomas Parker, my old college friend who now worked for the district attorney's office. Thomas was appalled by what we shared. Financial exploitation of elders is a priority for our office right now, Thomas explained. What you're describing involves multiple serious offenses, but we need rock-solid evidence that will stand up in court. That evening, we held a secret meeting at Elaine's house with a small group of trusted friends. Walter from next door, Richard and George from my poker group, Elaine, whose support had been unwavering throughout this ordeal. Each offered their help without hesitation. Walter had a nephew who worked for a security company. By midnight, my house had been discreetly fitted with tiny cameras in the living room, dining room, kitchen, and my home office, the areas where Anthony and Laura most often discussed their plans when they thought I wasn't listening. Elaine, who had previously worked as an administrative assistant at a law firm, helped organize all the documentation we were gathering: bank records, property documents with forged signatures, statements from friends about Anthony's inquiries regarding my mental state, recordings of conversations where they discussed their plans. You need to appear increasingly trusting and slightly confused, Harold advised. Let them think their plan is working. The more comfortable they feel, the more they'll reveal. It was the hardest acting job of my life. When Anthony and Laura visited, I played the role of an increasingly forgetful, grateful father. I asked the same questions multiple times. I expressed excitement about Silver Sunset Acres. I signed harmless documents in front of them while forgetting to sign the power of attorney forms, always with a believable excuse. Is this for the train reservation? I would ask innocently, knowing full well what the documents actually contained. Yes, Dad, just routine paperwork. Anthony would lie smoothly. Nothing to worry about. Laura became increasingly impatient with my forgetfulness, often shooting Anthony exasperated looks when she thought I wasn't watching. Their mask of concern grew thinner as the departure date approached, their true feelings leaking through in subtle ways. We should just get him declared incompetent now, I overheard Laura hissing to Anthony in the kitchen. This is taking too long. After he's at Silver Sunset, Anthony replied. Their doctor is already briefed. One evaluation there, and we'll have everything we need. Harold's contact at the train company confirmed what we already knew: the ticket was one way only, with no return passage booked or paid for. The same contact helped us understand the exact sequence of events planned for departure day, which would be critical for our counter-strategy. The emotional toll was enormous. Playing the role of oblivious father while knowing my son was actively betraying me required compartmentalizing my feelings in a way I'd never experienced. Each night after they left, I would sit alone in my study, looking at old photographs of Anthony as a boy, trying to reconcile that smiling child with the calculating adult he had become. Elaine became my emotional anchor during this time. One evening, when the weight of it all became too much to bear, I broke down in her living room. I failed him somehow, I sobbed, decades of pent-up emotion finally breaking free. I must have done something wrong for him to turn out this way. Elaine held me tightly, her own tears falling. You did not fail, Julius. You gave him everything a parent could give. Some people just make their own choices, no matter how much love they've been shown. What if I'm making a mistake? I asked. What if there's some explanation I haven't considered? The evidence speaks for itself, she said gently. Trust what you heard with your own ears. Trust what you've seen with your own eyes. Whatever happens next, you've given Anthony every chance to be a decent human being. The rest is on him. By the night before departure, everything was in place. Jackson had prepared court filings documenting the attempted fraud and exploitation, ready to be submitted the moment our confrontation occurred. Harold and Thomas had coordinated with local police to be nearby but unobtrusive at the train station. Walter, Richard, George, and other friends were positioned as witnesses who could corroborate my mental competence and the pattern of suspicious behavior from Anthony and Laura. I packed my suitcase as instructed, but instead of clothes and toiletries, it contained copies of all the evidence we had gathered. Every forged document, every bank record, transcripts and recordings of incriminating conversations. The comprehensive cognitive assessment proving my mental capacity, my real overnight bag, with essentials for a few days away from home, was already at Elaine's, where I would actually be staying while legal proceedings unfolded. That night, I stood in the center of my living room, looking at the home Margaret and I had built together. The evidence suggested Anthony and Laura planned to start emptying it of valuables the very afternoon they put me on that train. The thought of them dismantling our life together, selling off memories as if they meant nothing, filled me with a cold determination that overrode my heartbreak. I won't let them take you, I whispered to the empty room, feeling Margaret's presence all around me. I promise you that. I slept surprisingly well, waking before dawn with the clarity that comes from absolute certainty. Today would change everything. Today, the predators would discover their intended prey had teeth. Friday morning dawned clear and crisp, the kind of perfect autumn day Margaret had always loved. I dressed carefully in the suit I'd worn to our 40th anniversary celebration, Margaret's favorite tie completing the ensemble. If I was going to confront the darkest betrayal of my life, I would do so looking my best. I ate breakfast calmly, reviewing the plan one final time in my mind. Harold would be at the station with Thomas. Jackson would arrive with the court papers at precisely the right moment. Elaine, Walter, and other friends would be positioned throughout the station, witnesses to whatever unfolded. Everything hinged on timing and Anthony and Laura revealing their true intentions in a public setting. They arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, both dressed impeccably, wearing identical expressions of forced cheerfulness. "Big day, Dad," Anthony boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Are you all packed and ready for your adventure?" "I believe so," I replied, gesturing to the suitcase by the door. Though I may have forgotten something, my mind isn't what it used to be. I gave a self-deprecating laugh, watching how they exchanged satisfied glances. Laura inspected the suitcase. "Is this all you're taking? What about your valuable items? The jewelry, important documents?" "Oh, yes, I almost forgot." I retreated to my bedroom and returned with a small lockbox. "All in here. Margaret's jewelry, our marriage certificate, my banking information, all the irreplaceable things." Anthony took the box with poorly concealed eagerness. "We'll keep this super safe for you, Dad. Don't worry about a thing. What he didn't know was that the lockbox contained only worthless costume jewelry and photocopies of documents. Everything of true value was already secure. The drive to the train station was surreal. Sitting in the back seat of Anthony's luxury SUV, I listened to them chat about their plans for the weekend, knowing those plans involved dismantling my life the moment I was out of sight. "We're thinking of having the painting crew start Monday," Laura said, not even bothering with pretense anymore. "The realtor thinks a fresh, neutral color would help with staging." "Sounds practical," I murmured, gazing out the window at the familiar streets of Boston, playing the role of the oblivious father one last time. The station was busy with Friday morning travelers. Anthony parked in the short-term lot, and Laura immediately took charge of my suitcase. As we walked toward the main entrance, I spotted Harold sitting on a bench reading a newspaper, Thomas at the coffee kiosk, and Elaine pretending to study a train schedule. Everything was in place. We checked in at the customer service desk for the Transcontinental Explorer. The attendant smiled professionally as she processed my ticket. "Mr. Harrington, we have you in a deluxe sleeper compartment all the way to Sedona, Arizona. Your meals are included in the dining car, and there will be scenic stops along the route. The journey takes approximately 3 days." "And the return trip?" I asked innocently. I seemed to have misplaced that information. The attendant looked confused, checking her computer. "I'm sorry, sir. This is a one-way ticket. There is no return journey booked." I turned to Anthony with perfectly feigned confusion. "That can't be right. I'm just going for a vacation, not moving permanently. We discussed this, didn't we?" Anthony's smile tightened. "Dad, remember, we talked about this. Silver Sunset Acres is a wonderful residential community. You're going to love living there. But my home is here, in Boston. All my friends, my volunteer work, everything I care about is here." Laura stepped in smoothly. "Julius, you're getting confused again. This is exactly why we're concerned about you living alone. Silver Sunset has excellent memory care facilities." "Memory care? You think I have dementia?" I allowed genuine hurt to enter my voice. "Dad, we've noticed the signs for months," Anthony said, lowering his voice and looking around as if embarrassed by my behavior. "Forgetting conversations, misplacing things, confusion about basic details. It's time you had professional care." The station attendant was watching our exchange with growing discomfort. Harold had moved closer, still pretending to read his newspaper. "So this ticket is one way," I said slowly. "You're sending me to Arizona permanently, to a memory care facility, because you think I have dementia." "It's for your own good," Laura insisted, her patience visibly wearing thin. "Now we should hurry. The train boards in 20 minutes. I took a deep breath. This was the moment everything changed. "I know everything, Anthony," I said quietly. "What are you talking about, Dad?" His expression remained concerned, but I saw the first flicker of unease in his eyes. "I know about the loans you took out against my house with forged signatures. I know about the attempts to access my bank accounts. I know about the real estate agent you've already contacted to sell my home. I know about the guardianship proceedings you've initiated based on false claims of my mental incapacity." Anthony's face drained of color. Laura's eyes darted toward the exit. "Most of all," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "I know what you said 3 days ago in my dining room when you didn't realize I was home. About the old man not knowing what hit him, about waiting years for my money, about shipping me off to a retirement warehouse so you could sell everything I've worked my entire life to build." Harold approached now, no longer pretending to be a casual bystander. Thomas joined him, along with Elaine and Walter. "What is this?" Anthony demanded, looking at the growing circle of people. "Dad's confused. He gets like this sometimes. It's why we're taking him somewhere he can get proper care." Harold pulled out his phone and played an audio recording of their conversation from my dining room, their voices crystal clear as they discussed liquidating my assets and ensuring I couldn't contact anyone once I was at Silver Sunset. Laura lunged for the phone. "You can't record people without their knowledge. That's illegal." "Not in Massachusetts. When one party consents and there's reasonable suspicion of criminal activity," Thomas said, stepping forward and identifying himself as a representative of the district attorney's office. "And there's quite a lot of criminal activity to discuss here." Anthony's face transformed, the mask of concerned son dropping away completely, replaced by cold fury. "You set us up. You've been playing us." "No, Anthony. You set yourself up the moment you decided your inheritance was more important than your father's well-being." Jackson arrived then, court papers in hand, accompanied by 2 police officers, Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. "These officers have some questions for you regarding allegations of attempted elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy." Laura broke first, her composure shattering. "This was all Anthony's idea. I just went along with it. He said his father was losing his mind anyway, that we'd be doing him a favor." Anthony's betrayal extended even to his wife as he immediately countered, "That's a lie. Laura was the one who found Silver Sunset. She made all the arrangements. I was just trying to help my father." As they turned on each other, the station manager offered us a private room to continue the discussion away from curious onlookers. The police officers led Anthony and Laura away for formal questioning, their bitter accusations against each other echoing through the station. I stood watching them go, feeling strangely hollow. The confrontation I had been building toward had come and gone, leaving devastation in its wake. There was no satisfaction in victory, only grief for what had been lost. Elaine approached and gently took my hand. "Are you all right?" "No," I answered truthfully. "I don't think I will be for a long time." Jackson placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. "The legal process is just beginning, Julius. There will be difficult days ahead, but you've stopped them before they could do irreparable damage." The station manager returned, offering his sympathies and a quiet place to compose myself. In that moment of relative privacy, I allowed myself to fully feel the magnitude of what had happened. My own son had been willing to discard me like unwanted furniture, to steal everything I had, to confine me in a facility far from home and friends, all for money. When Anthony was brought past me on his way to the police car, our eyes met briefly. In that moment, I said the words I needed him to hear. "You'll regret this, Anthony. Not because of the legal consequences, but because you'll never know what it means to be loved unconditionally. I gave you that love for your entire life, and you threw it away for money that was never yours to take." Something flickered across his face, recognition, shame, defiance. I couldn't tell. Then he was gone, and the son I thought I knew went with him. The aftermath of that day at the train station unfolded over many difficult months. The legal proceedings were exhausting and painful. Anthony and Laura faced multiple charges, including attempted exploitation of an elder, forgery, fraud, and conspiracy. The evidence against them was overwhelming. From the recorded conversations to the forged documents to the testimony of bank officials and friends. In the end, they accepted a plea deal to avoid a public trial. Anthony received probation and community service, along with mandatory financial restitution. Laura, who had additional charges related to real estate fraud through her business, faced more serious consequences. Their marriage did not survive the mutual recriminations and blame. My beautiful 4-bedroom colonial became a source of painful memories rather than comfort. For several weeks, I stayed with Elaine, unable to face returning to rooms where such betrayal had been planned. Eventually, with her support, I reclaimed my space, rearranging furniture and repainting walls to create something that felt like mine again rather than a crime scene. The hardest part wasn't the legal battles or even facing the community knowing what my son had tried to do. The hardest part was the emptiness of victory. I had prevented Anthony from stealing my assets and forcing me into an unwanted facility. But I had lost something far more valuable than money or property. I had lost the belief that my son loved me, that the years of sacrifice and devotion had meant anything to him. During those dark days, Elaine became my anchor. Her quiet strength and practical wisdom helped me navigate the complex emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. "You're allowed to mourn the relationship you thought you had," she would say. "That loss is real, even if what you're mourning never truly existed." Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my life. The experience had awakened in me a determination to help others facing similar situations. Working with Jackson, I established the Harrington Foundation for Elder Protection, using a portion of the assets Anthony had been so desperate to steal. The foundation provided legal assistance to seniors facing exploitation and funded education programs about recognizing the warning signs of elder abuse. I began speaking at community centers and retirement homes, sharing my experience and the lessons I had learned. Financial abuse of elders isn't just about money, I would tell my audiences. It's about dignity, autonomy, and the right to make our own choices. No one, not even family, has the right to take that from us. My volunteer work expanded from teaching architecture to include advocacy for strengthening laws protecting older adults from exploitation. I testified before state legislative committees, met with law enforcement officials, and helped develop protocols for banks to identify potential financial abuse. Through this work, I discovered a sense of purpose that transcended my personal pain. Each senior who found help through our foundation, each family who learned to recognize warning signs before tragedy struck, represented a small victory against those who would prey on vulnerability. 8 months after the confrontation at the train station, Anthony reached out through his attorney, asking to meet. I agreed, with Jackson present as both legal counsel and emotional support. The man who entered Jackson's conference room looked nothing like the confident, successful son I remembered. Thinner, grayer, with shadows under his eyes, Anthony sat across from me like a stranger. "I've been in therapy," he began awkwardly, trying to understand why I did what I did. "There's no excuse. I know that. But I want you to know I'm sorry." I studied him, searching for the boy I had raised in this diminished figure. "Are you sorry for what you did, or sorry you were caught?" He flinched. Both at first. Now, just sorry for what I did, for who I became, for throwing away the only genuine relationship I've ever had. We talked for over an hour. I listened more than spoke, hearing Anthony describe his spiral into debt, his desperate attempts to maintain the lifestyle Laura demanded, the gradual erosion of his moral boundaries. He talked about childhood memories I'd thought he'd forgotten, moments of connection that had somehow been overshadowed by greed and entitlement. At the end of our meeting, Anthony asked, "Can you ever forgive me?" I considered the question carefully before answering. Forgiveness isn't something I can just hand over, Anthony. It's a process, and I'm still in the middle of it. What I can tell you is that I'm willing to see who you become from here. The rest will depend on your actions, not your words. It was the beginning of a complicated, cautious rebuilding, not a return to blind trust or the simple relationship of father and son, but something new, approached with eyes wide open on both sides. I had no illusions about instant reconciliation, and neither did he. Meanwhile, life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Elaine and I grew closer, our relationship deepening beyond friendship. At 68, I hadn't expected to find love again after Margaret, but Elaine's warmth, intelligence, and straightforward nature filled a space in my life I hadn't realized was empty. When she moved into my home, a year after the train station confrontation, it felt like the beginning of a new chapter rather than an epilogue. We transformed the sunroom from Margaret's art studio into a shared space where Elaine could pursue her pottery while I worked on architectural sketches for community projects. Through it all, I learned lessons that no architectural degree or business success had taught me. I learned that family isn't always defined by blood, but by those who stand beside you in your darkest moments. I learned that age brings wisdom but doesn't make us immune to betrayal or heartbreak. I learned that starting over is possible at any stage of life, if you're willing to reimagine what your future might look like. Most importantly, I learned that my worth was never tied to being needed by my son or anyone else. My value didn't diminish when Anthony's love proved conditional. My purpose didn't end when my role as father was fundamentally changed. The transcontinental explorer still runs its route across America. Sometimes I look at the schedule online and think about the journey I was meant to take that day, a one-way trip to isolation and powerlessness. Instead, I embarked on a different journey, one with no fixed destination but with companions of my own choosing. Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. My relationship with Anthony remains complicated, marked by cautious rebuilding and occasional setbacks. My work with the foundation grows more impactful each year. Elaine and I travel often, but always with return tickets firmly in hand, always coming back to the home we've created together. I've come to believe that the greatest gift we can give ourselves in our later years isn't financial security, though that matters. It isn't even the love of family, precious as that can be. It's the courage to stand up for ourselves, to insist on our right to direct our own lives, and to recognize that our stories don't end just because others try to write our final chapters for us. If you've stayed with me through this difficult story, I hope you'll take away this truth. It's never too late to fight for your dignity, to rewrite your story, to insist on controlling your own journey. I'm living proof of that. And if you're facing your own version of betrayal or hardship, remember that you're stronger than you know, and you're not alone. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone you loved? Or have you witnessed the strength of an older person in your life who refused to be sidelined or taken advantage of? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and redemption. Your support helps these important stories reach others who might need to hear them. Thank you for listening. And remember, every journey worth taking has a return ticket, chosen by you.